Voyager created 3 Star Trek captains and an admiral, but TNG still has them beat. When Star Trek Voyager premiered in 1995, it wasn't just the franchise's first female-led series, it was also a pressure cooker for Starfleet careers. Stranded in the Delta Quadrant, Janeway's crew had to improvise, adapt, and rise to responsibilities that far exceeded their official ranks. That crucible of isolation forged leaders, and by the end of the series, and in canon that followed, Voyager managed to produce no fewer than 3 captains and an admiral. Not bad for a single ship stranded 70,000 light-years from home. But as impressive as Voyager's record looks, Star Trek: The Next Generation still stands tall as the true Starfleet leadership factory. Picard's Enterprise D launched a whole fleet of admirals and captains, and in sheer scope of influence, TNG continues to outshine its successor. Still, comparing these two series reveals something fascinating. The way Star Trek treats rank, leadership, and legacy is just as important to its storytelling as warp drives and phasers. Let's take a closer look at Voyager's leaders, Janeway, Chakotay, Paris, and Tuvok, and how TNG ultimately keeps its crown. Admiral Janeway, the prototype for Starfleet's future. It's impossible to talk about Voyager's impact without starting with Kathryn Janeway herself. When Voyager first aired, she made history as the first female captain to lead a Star Trek series. By the end of the series, she wasn't just a captain, she had become a living legend. Canon confirms that Janeway eventually became an admiral. We see her in Star Trek: Nemesis, where she gives Captain Picard his mission briefing. This cameo might be brief, but it cements Janeway's status in Starfleet history. While Kirk and Picard also wore admiral's bars at different points, Janeway's ascension feels less like a bureaucratic promotion and more like recognition for having pulled off the impossible, bringing her crew home against every conceivable odd. Janeway's admiralty also symbolized a shift in how Starfleet valued experience. She wasn't a desk officer. She was a battle-tested explorer who had forged first contact after first contact, outwitted the Borg, and kept her ship intact through crises that would have broken lesser captains. She was the kind of admiral who represented the frontier spirit, not just command hierarchy. Captain Chakotay, the unexpected Starfleet leader. If Voyager was a crucible for Janeway, it was also a proving ground for her first officer. Chakotay began the series as a former Maquis leader, technically a criminal in Starfleet's eyes. Yet over 7 years, Janeway's trust and mentorship helped shape him into a model Starfleet officer. The Voyager novels, part of the extended universe canon for years, confirmed Chakotay's eventual promotion to captain of Voyager itself. Even in soft canon, this trajectory makes sense. He had already served as captain in everything but name during Voyager's many crises. He commanded away missions, negotiated with alien species, and made life or death decisions. More importantly, Chakotay's leadership represented a unique Starfleet ethos, the ability to reconcile different traditions, loyalties, and even moral codes under one banner. For a character who once stood outside Starfleet law, ending as a Starfleet captain is one of the most satisfying arcs in Trek history. Captain Paris, from bad boy to Starfleet example. Perhaps the most surprising name on Voyager's leadership list is Tom Paris. Introduced as a cocky pilot with a rebellious streak, Paris spent much of the early series being the ship's resident daredevil. But Voyager gave him something Star Trek rarely does for its wild cards: the chance to grow up. Paris evolved from hotshot pilot into a responsible husband, father, and officer. By the end of the series, he was a seasoned leader trusted with far more than helm control. In various post-series materials, including Star Trek Online, Paris is shown as a captain, proving that his character arc wasn't just about redemption, but about transformation. Paris's journey from disgraced officer to captain represents Voyager's ability to reshape lives. Without the isolation of the Delta Quadrant, it's doubtful Paris would have matured the way he did. In the end, Voyager made him not just Starfleet's best pilot, but a leader in his own right. Captain Tuvok, the silent, steady Starfleet professional, Tuvok was never as flashy as Paris or as conflicted as Chakotay. Instead, he was steady, reliable, and quietly brilliant, a Vulcan officer who balanced discipline with loyalty. His presence on Voyager was a constant reminder that Starfleet's backbone isn't just made of captains, but of professionals who keep ships running day after day. Post-Voyager canon, again, particularly in the novels and Star Trek Online, gives Tuvok his own command. This makes sense. He had already served in Starfleet for decades, and his experience made him a natural choice for a captaincy. His leadership style was the polar opposite of Paris's flamboyance or Chakotay's flexible pragmatism. Tuvok embodied logic-driven, patient, and unshakable command. In many ways, he represented the kind of Starfleet captain who doesn't need fame or flash, just the competence to keep the Federation safe. Voyager's leadership legacy. Taken together, Voyager produced a remarkable list of leaders. Out of one ship, we got Admiral Janeway, a Starfleet icon. Captain Chakotay, a redeemed rebel-turned-model officer. Captain Paris, a reformed hotshot turned respected commander. Captain Tuvok, a professional who exemplifies Vulcan excellence in Starfleet. For a series that began with a relatively small, isolated cast, this is impressive. Unlike the Enterprise, Voyager didn't have a galaxy of admirals and captains around it. Everyone was on their own, forced to grow or break. That pressure cooked 4 remarkable leaders out of one stranded ship. But still, when we zoom out, the next generation has Voyager beat. TNG's fleet of admirals and captains, the Enterprise D wasn't stranded. It was the flagship of the Federation. That meant its crew regularly brushed shoulders with high-ranking Starfleet brass, and its officers were constantly tested in ways that showcased their leadership potential. The result? TNG created a leadership legacy that dwarfs Voyager's in sheer numbers. Jean-Luc Picard, a captain already when we met him, later becoming an admiral in Star Trek, Picard. William Riker ends up captain of the Titan, one of Starfleet's most respected commanders. Data, promoted to captain in alternate timelines, all good things, and eventually given his own command post-Picard. Beverly Crusher, a captain in the All Good Things future and eventually leader of her own medical vessel in extended lore. Geordi LaForge canonically becomes captain of the USS Challenger in Voyager's episode Timeless. Worf becomes a captain by Lower Decks and Picard era. And that's not even counting TNG's bench of admirals, Nechayev, Ross, and even future Picard. What's different about TNG is the sheer reach of its influence. Almost every major officer on the Enterprise D eventually became a captain or admiral in some timeline, canon, or extended lore. The Enterprise wasn't just a ship, it was a leadership academy in motion. Why TNG still holds the crown? So why does TNG beat Voyager when Voyager arguably had a tougher challenge? The answer lies in scale and storytelling focus. TNG was about the Federation's core, its flagship, and the political and military weight that came with it. Naturally, its officers became leaders across Starfleet. Voyager, meanwhile, was about survival, isolation, and personal growth. Its leaders emerged from crisis, but it didn't have the same institutional scope to spawn admirals by the dozen. In other words, Voyager proved Starfleet could create great leaders even in impossible situations.